Hey there everybody, welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Sam Bash and I'm here with a surprise for you. If you're a regular viewer of our content, you know we like to try to keep you up to date on all the most recent TV and movie breakdowns. But if you didn't hear, we're finally going to see the Avengers go up against the Mad Titan Thanos later this year. I'm very excited. It didn't seem like it. Here we go, let me be excited. There I am, I'm excited. Fans are preparing for this film in many different ways. If you want more info on the Infinity Stones and where they're at in the MCU, go ahead and check out my video I put out a few weeks ago. It's very good. Besides that, a few peeps online have figured out that if you watch one MCU movie a week starting the first week of January leading up to the release of Infinity War, you'll have watched all of the MCU movies that they have to offer. That's a lot of movies. So I was thinking, why not do the breakdowns on all the MCU movies that New Rockstars hasn't done just yet and make sure you guys are all caught up to speed come May 4th. Sound good? Good. I'm gonna do it anyway, so hopefully you're ready. As always, here's your spoiler warning for the Iron Man movie, its sequels, the extended MCU, the comics, etc., etc. Let's get going, just to get you kids excited as for what's to come. There's a pretty fun Easter egg in this movie that does tie back to the X-Men. Ever heard of them? To make it easier to keep this organized for you and the editor, how's it going, guys? Let's break it down into sections, starting with the fun one, the one I love, the one you love, comic book references. Starting with our opening scene in the Humvee in Afghanistan, which does look closer to a California desert, because it is. I wanted to bring up a creative choice to bring Tony Stark into the 21st century. Originally, Tony was involved in the Vietnam War, and then during a retelling of his origins, it was updated to the Gulf War, so now it makes sense to update it once more to the Afghanistan War. Actually, that comes around in a really cool way later, but more on that soon. But what is more fun is the reference to Iron Man's most famous foe, the Mandarin, within the first 10 minutes of the film. The terrorist group is known as the Ten Rings, and you can see the 10 rings on the flag in the background, and this should mean more to comic fans. The 10 rings is a nod to the 10 alien rings that the Mandarin wields to wreak evil onto the world. Classic Mandarin. While we never did get a comic-accurate Mandarin, we did get a hint of him in All Hail the King's Marvel short. You guys remember that from a couple years back? Also, fun production side note, one of the original drafts of the script had Iron Man going up against the Mandarin in this first movie, but the creative team behind the movie decided to hold off and choose Obadiah Stane instead. Moving forward to the awards ceremony, we're introduced to a few of Iron Man's rogues and friends from the comics, namely the previously mentioned Obadiah Stane, Happy Hogan, and Colonel Rhodes. Obadiah makes his debut in the Invincible Iron Man number 163 in October 1982. Very cool. Originally, Obadiah was the head of his own company, Stane International. You actually get a fun reference to Obadiah's villain persona, Ironmonger, by Mr. Jeff Bridges himself in this clip.
That's what we do. We're ironmongers. We make weapons.
As for Happy Hogan, his first appearance was back in Tales of Suspense number 45 in September 1963. Before joining Team Tony, Happy was a boxer, but eventually he became close friends with Iron Man. You know a good chunk of his history from the films, but I thought it was worth mentioning him. He's a good guy. Just like mentioning our pal before, Colonel James Rhodes, aka Rhodey, eventually War Machine, but don't tell anyone that just yet. His first appearance was in Iron Man issue number 118 in January of '79. A friend of Tony and one of the first replacements for Iron Man. He donned that armor a few times before getting his own identity as War Machine. Got that Gatling gun right here. We even get a few references to War Machine as well. One here when he says next time.
Next time, baby.
But also, there's a shot of the War Machine armor during the credits. You're welcome for that one. You probably didn't see. You're probably walking out of the theater, then you turn around for those after credit scenes. Scooching outside the casino for a sec, we run into ace reporter Christine Everhart. Yes, she too is in the comics. We're getting a lot of Easter eggs right out of the gate. In the comics, Tony keeps his identity a secret, and she's a reporter from the Daily Bugle, not Vanity Fair, who is investigating Tony and Iron Man's connections. For this movie, they had to change the Daily Bugle's name because it was owned by Sony. You know, not anymore though. She actually makes many appearances in future MCU films, even changing professions. Remember that faux news network that interviews Scott Lang from prison?
Scott, your story is well known.
There she is. Good to see you again. The next morning, we're introduced to Pepper Potts, a popular ally and love interest of Tony in the comics. Pepper made her debut in Tales of Suspense number 45 in September 1963 and has gone from assistant to lover to hero. Many different personas, in fact. Hera, Rescue, Coast Guard, and even Iron Man at times. It would be pretty cool to see her don some armor in Infinity War, but you know, there's too many people there already. We also get Tony's personal butler, kinda, with Jarvis.
You are not authorized to access this area.
So you remember Jarvis? Just a very intelligent system. It's not great, but it works. In the comics though, Tony actually has a real butler named Edwin Jarvis, who often is seen in the Avengers Mansion in the comics. Eventually we did get a real Edwin Jarvis in the MCU in a seriously underrated series, Agent Carter. I love that show. Haley Atwell and James Darcy as Edwin Jarvis, they just had so much charisma together. It was lovely to see them work together. Anyway, I recommend you checking out those 2 seasons of that show when you get a chance. As for the AI Jarvis, we know how he ends up. Also worth mentioning that in the comics, Tony is usually based in New York, but director Jon Favreau wanted to change up the scenery a little bit from flying between buildings to flying over mountains and beaches. Also, he probably didn't want to move to New York for a couple months. He just wanted to stay at home. Scooching forward again to the weapons test, pay attention to the name of the brand new missiles from Stark Industries.
It's the first missile system to incorporate our proprietary repulsor technology.
That's right, Repulsor, which most of you are familiar with as the same name of the cannons in Iron Man's chest and in his hands. Next up, after Tony's life-saving surgery, we meet the man that Tony owes his life to, Yinsen. In the comics, the character goes by Ho Yinsen and debuted in Tales of Suspense number 39 in March of '63. As I said before, Tony's origins changed to adapt to more current wars, and with that, the Yinsen in the film was changed to being from Vietnam to Afghanistan. Also, his death in the film is very similar to how he dies in the comics. So sad. As Yinsen and Tony start to build their armor, we get a look at another Marvel villain, Raza. Later on in the film, we see Raza with a wound on his face that makes his appearance closer to his comic book counterpart, but that's all they have in common. The Raza in the comics is a Shi'ar space pirate, and Raza in the film is a terrorist in Afghanistan. Either way, they both look pretty cool. Next, we get a pretty impressive live-action Mark I version of the Iron Man suit. Sure, it's not as cool as the Mark III that we get to see flying around later in the movie, but it is still pretty cool, am I right? This one can still fire rockets, and it has a flamethrower. It can shoot up in the air and definitely can't land. And in real life, this clip right here, Tony should be definitely dead, like super dead. After Tony returns to America, we are introduced to Agent Coulson. Fun fact, originally Clark Gregg was supposed to be playing a character just named Agent, but director Favreau and his team loved him so much they actually gave him a proper name, which they should have because Phil's amazing. While Phil Coulson was an original creation for the MCU, this was the first introduction of the Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division into the MCU, also known as S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. has been in the movies for a little while now, so you guys have a pretty good idea of what they are, but they did make their debut in the comics back in Strange Tales number 135 in August of 1965. This was a group of people who worked together to combat para or supernatural threats to the Earth. Also, little plug, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. seasons 3 through 5 are pretty great, and you should watch them. Please and thank you, I don't want it to get canceled. Next up, we see the Mark II suit. Just thought it was worth mentioning that the Mark II suit in the movie is a little bit sleeker, in my opinion, than the comic book Mark II suit. Hey, we get to like what we like, all right? I'm not gonna judge you if you enjoyed the Mark II suit from the comics. I'm just not personally fond of metal underwear on the outside. During his test flight, we get a nod to a pretty famous Marvel monster that sadly doesn't look to be appearing in the MCU anytime soon, but who knows? Check out that movie poster behind Tony when he's flying around in the streets. Went too fast, didn't it? Don't worry, we got your back. This is a fictional poster for a film in the MCU titled Fing Fang Foom. If you guys don't know, Fing Fang Foom is a fictional alien that looks like a dragon in the Marvel comics that Iron Man has gone up against many times. It's not a dragon, it's an alien that looks like a dragon. I've been corrected on that many times. But continuing forward with this test flight, there's a very special Easter egg that I mentioned earlier. Listen to that plane that Jarvis mentions.
What's SR-71's record?
The altitude record for fixed-wing flight is 85,000 feet, sir.
That's the SR-71 Blackbird. Might be saying, hey Sam, that's a real plane. Why are you mentioning this? I'd say true, but it's also the plane that the X-Men used to save the world. And this is actually a pretty safe Easter egg since it is a real ship, and also it is the X-Men ship. They could say whatever they want. Also, Kevin Feige worked on the X-Men films and on Iron Man. Makes sense. Also, we finally got the Mark III in the official Iron Man, red and yellow. Fans rejoice. Remember that harmless thing I mentioned earlier? Well, now we're gonna move to something that's a little more harmful. Let's look at Tony saving that town from the 10 Rings. What was the name of that town?
It's a town called Golmira. Heard of it?
Interesting. That should sound familiar since that's the town where Yinsen and his family lived. Sad again. So Tony's anger actually makes a lot of sense right now. Next up, we get a pretty fun nod to the upcoming villain of Iron Man 2. Listen to the names of the fighter jets going after Tony.
Whiplash one, what is?
Sure, they probably didn't know right off the bat that they were going to use Whiplash as the main villain in the second movie, but it was pretty exciting to hear these little nods. Also, listen to that ringtone on Rhodey's phone. Sounds awful familiar. Don't worry, I'll get to that very soon. Makes me very excited. The next reference is probably the most subtle, but it is the most important. Way back when, Obadiah Stane originally created a group of assassins named the Chessmen, cause comics. Now, they didn't appear in the movies, but check out Obadiah in this scene. I was just hanging out next to a chessboard. These things don't happen by accident, people. This is very intentional, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you, Marvel. Also, thank you, Marvel, for the first big nod to the next few movies that you were gonna release. This is probably the biggest Easter egg to come out of the early Marvel days, and you may already know it, to be completely honest, but a certain Avengers main weapon did pop up in Stark's workshop. Let's take a look. It's freaking Captain America's shield. Not the real thing. There's just plans for it. Why is Tony looking at that? Is he actually looking at that? Maybe not. They probably just snuck it in there at the very end. Who knows? All I gotta say is, thank you, Marvel. Our next little Easter egg comes during the showdown with Ironmonger and Iron Man. Check out that company behind Ironmonger's head. Bam, that's the Roxxon Corporation, a company that has popped up in the MCU properties like Agent Carter, and in the comics, they've made numerous villains. They're the bad guys. They also popped up in the Cloak and Dagger trailer from a little while back, so I'm excited to see more of that. Fun fact, when the Ironmonger gets hit by the giant arc reactor wave, Obadiah wasn't supposed to die. He was supposed to have somehow survived, like run away at the very end. Jeff Bridges himself has confirmed this, that he signed a multi-film deal and was surprised they decided to kill him off. Maybe he's not dead? He looked pretty dead by the end, but who knows, it's comic books. Coming to an end here, we hear the fake cover for Tony and Iron Man, which does stem from the comics. Coulson tells Tony to say that Iron Man is Tony's bodyguard, but fortunately, he just comes clean.
I am Iron Man.
Which to me is a much more interesting storyline for the films. Finally, shout out to Samuel L. Jackson appearing as Nick Fury. Fun fact, when Marvel created the Ultimate Universe for their comics, they based their new Nick Fury off of Samuel L. Jackson. They even joke about it in the comic that Nick Fury would want Samuel L. Jackson to play him in a movie. Now, really quick, let's hit up some of those pop culture references. Ooh, they're so juicy. Listen to this orchestral theme during Tony's award ceremony. Oh, and then listen to this big band song during the casino scene. Oh, then listen to that song in his bedroom. And listen to Rhodey's ringtone. It's all the same. That, boys and girls, would be the fantastic classic theme song to the animated Iron Man TV show.
Tony Stark makes you feel he's a cool exec with a heart of steel.
Yes, he had an animated series that I did not know about. Never heard about it before today, but I am a big fan of that song. I'm gonna download it. Got a lot of music little nods here. Listen to this song that's playing during that scene when they're on the plane and the stewardesses somehow become strippers. It's really weird and dated.
Excuse me if I'm just a little bit distracted here.
And that's as much as we're gonna play. Don't want to get flagged. That would be Step on Tony by Ghostface Killah, who, by the way, was supposed to make a cameo in this movie, but it was cut for time reasons, I think. He also goes by the alias Tony Stark and Iron Man, so it would be pretty cool to see him in one of these movies. Next musician to pop up during the escape scene in the Mark I suit. For a second, you can see Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine getting pummeled by Iron Man. I didn't know he was in this movie, but it's pretty fun because Rage Against the Machine, he tried to and then he did. It's clever. Then listen to the tune Obadiah is playing on a piano in Stark's house. That would be a piece by Antonio Salieri, who is a composer from the 18th century who had a complicated and difficult relationship with Mozart, and in some stories people have said that he may have had a hand in murdering Mozart. Now, of course, that's not concrete, but it does parallel Obadiah and Tony's relationship, no? I think so. And after that, at the party at the Walt Disney Music Hall, pay attention to how Tony forgets Christine's name.
Kerr.
Christine.
That's right.
He refers to her as Carrie, which is funny since both of those names are titles of popular Stephen King novels. Again, I think it's on purpose. Also, fans of The Big Lebowski should keep their eyes out because during this scene when Pepper Potts is stealing files from Obadiah, check out some of the names. Went by really fast, don't worry, we'll enhance it right here. It says Lebowski right up there if you missed it. Also, quick shout out to Peter Billingsley, who played Ralphie in A Christmas Story, because he's that bald scientist right there being yelled at by Obadiah. Let's hear some yelling.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave!
And finally, Black Sabbath's Iron Man during the credits of Iron Man. Of course, I had to mention it. You knew it, I just had to say it. Also, don't worry, I didn't forget. Stan Lee made his cameo right here. No one forgets this one. Tony mistakes Stan Lee for Hugh Hefner. There you go. All the Easter eggs and references I could find in Iron Man. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if I missed any or which ones were your favorites in the comments down below. But make sure you like this video, subscribe to New Rockstars for more content, and make sure you check out our panel show every weekend. It's a whole lot of fun. I'm at Sam Basher on Twitter. Make sure you send me your thoughts and feelings about these and if I should do more of them, because I would like to. And I'll see you guys next time.